All right, we have Bethany Coston Criswell with us this morning. Bethany, thank you so much for joining me online today. Really excited to hear about how you and your business are doing during this crisis. But before we begin, give us a little rundown of your business, who you are, where you came from, so on and so forth.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Ken. So my husband and I started managing the business in the early 2000s. His grandparents started the business in 1963. And shortly after we acquired the business in 2005, we opened up a second location on the north side of town in 2007. And then we opened our third location in the Homewood section of Pittsburgh in 2017. And then most recently, we have expanded our business to Chicago, and we have a location there in Chicago now.
Okay. Well, Bethany, for everybody, we should probably let them know, A, where you're speaking from today and what type of business you're in.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I am here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we're in the funeral industry. So we own several funeral homes in the Pittsburgh area as well as Chicago.
Great. So Bethany, tell me before the COVID crisis hit, what was happening in your business? How was the business performing? Give us a quick rundown.
Well, business was performing as usual. A lot of the funeral business is curtailed around family and friends grieving with those who have lost a loved one. So our industry is really serving people, and there's always large numbers of people here at the funeral home. So not only do we have funeral services that are attended by a lot of people, but we also do graveside services where there's a ton of people, limousine services. So our industry is really fueled by, human interaction.
And I'm assuming you were essential business.
We are an essential business. Even though we are going through the COVID pandemic, people are continuing to die. So they don't just die during different seasons of the year. It's a continuous throughout the year. So, of course, we have had increased number of deaths due to COVID, but we are, our business is a normal, steady flow.
So what was the reaction when you first found out about the massive closures that we've had? How did you and Roland respond?
Well, first, we always try to stay informed. We wanted to always make sure that we were complying with our local ordinances as well as our state and our governing body through the Funeral Directors Association. So we always look to inform ourselves first through those governing bodies, and then we met with our staff very early on in the pandemic because we had to shift and change almost on a daily basis. We had to be out front and forward and kind of ahead of this thing because we had to let families know, what changes we were making as a firm. And then as far as what changes that meant for them, as far as planning funeral services. So we always stayed informed with our governing bodies. And we also met with our staff just to kind of think about what changes we could do quickly and how we could best serve our clients with those changes.
What was the response or the response of your staff? Was everybody like jumping in on board? Did you have any people that were fearful or didn't even want to come into work?
Yes, we did. And we still have some of our part-timers who have not been back to work since. But it was also important for us as a firm to have internal communications with our staff to let them know these are the different things that we're doing in-house to make sure that our staff is safe, as well as this is the limitations and restrictions that we're putting on those people coming into the funeral home. So it was important for us to, as a staff, make those plans so that our staff was at ease, as well as for our guests who come here to visit.
So you travel back and forth from the different locations. Tell me how you're managing communication during this crisis.
So a lot of since we've limited the number of people here at the funeral home, as far as making arrangements, every arrangement now is done via Zoom or via the telephone. So we are not meeting with families here in the office, as well as the families aren't coming in as often, of course, because they're not allowed, but When they do come in, we're having them sign anything that we need hard copy signatures of. They're bringing clothing in. So we have definitely limited that interaction with families coming to the funeral home. We've done online book registers as far as people texting a number to sign the registered book. And we also instituted Facebook Live and doing the live broadcast with all of our services so that families, with the number of restrictions, the number of people that are restricted to come is only 8. We now have opened it up so that Facebook Live, all of their family and friends could actually be and engage in the service without actually physically being here. So that has been a great addition to our services during this
What
time.
what about the communication with your staff, with
Mhm.
you being in different locations? How are you managing that piece right now?
So every morning, each of our staffs, we meet. We have a morning meeting. And because of the hour time difference, it kind of works in our favor. So our Pittsburgh staff, we meet at 9. So we always are meeting an hour ahead of
Mhm.
Chicago. So I usually join in via telephone. And sometimes we do Zoom when I want to see everyone's face. So we'll do Zoom meetings as well as telephone calls.
Okay. So during this time, what
Mhm.
type of planning are you doing to position yourself for when things open back up? Does it look different than what you were doing before?
It does. And I think we're going to have to really study and watch what's going on in the community as far as, are the numbers increasing? Are they decreasing? We want to definitely move slow with opening back up the number of people who can attend funeral services.
Mhm.
So we definitely will keep an eye on that. We have already started planning a memorial service for our at our church, Mount Airy Baptist Church. Just kind of had some ideas of doing like a joint memorial service for all the parishioners who have lost someone due to COVID. Many times they have been restricted from traveling to wherever that person lives. So I thought it would be a good idea to, you still want to commemorate someone's life. You don't want to, just, you want to cherish those memories. And I think one of the ways in which we can do that is as a church community, come together and have a memorial service for all those parishioners who lost um, who lost loved ones due to COVID.
So, eh, understanding that the funeral business is fairly consistent, okay, because people are always dying. d- did do you see you and your staff, your business, doing things completely different now that we've lived or we're living through this? Do you see any long-term changes that are going to be made?
Um, I do. I definitely. I think the Facebook Live. I think that that idea was a great idea because it gets people near and far engaged and able to attend the service. So I definitely see us doing a lot more of those broadcasting live services on Facebook. Some of the other changes, I think eventually, just like with 9/11, how we eventually went back to flying again. And it's kind of like once the government kind of put some safety measures in place,
Mhm.
we felt comfortable flying again. And I do believe the funeral industry, I think once we kind of get back to being in social gatherings, I do believe that we will get back to increasing the number of family and friends who attend funeral services and visitations here at the funeral home.
So, having been through this up through now and not knowing when it's going to end, what type of advice could you give the business owners that are watching this right now? What are some learnings or some things that you just need to throw their way?
I would definitely say you should always stay ahead. You want to always put messages out to your clients. You want to always give them some direction. You always want to stay up on what the current guidelines and restrictions on your particular type of business is. Whatever your governing body is instituting in your industry, you definitely want to stay up on those things. You always want to meet with your staff and clearly communicate with them exactly what you're doing as a firm to help protect your staff as well as your clients. And then you want to stay on top of whatever the federal government is doing to help small businesses, as well as whatever money they are offering or grants or forgivable loans that they're offering. You definitely want to stay up on top of that as well.
Okay. Any last closing words of advice for anybody, or any nuggets?
I would definitely say through a pandemic like this, you definitely want to have an action coach to help steer you along, also to help guide you and remind you, hey, are you still doing this? Are you still doing that? Because even though the pandemic is going on, we still have to run our businesses.
Mhm.
We still need to keep track of our cash flow. You still need to be hiring. So all of these things are still important and still going on because our industry is still functioning as normal, even though we're not bringing in as many people. But we still have to function and we still are essential workers. So I would definitely say stay up with what your local ordinances and state governing bodies are
Mhm.
doing, stay up with what the federal government is offering, and communicate clearly with your team.
Great. Well, thanks, Bethany. I really appreciate your time today. Once again, we have Bethany Coston Criswell of Coston Criswell Enterprises. They are a funeral business in both Pittsburgh and Chicago.